All right, 3, 2, 1.
Boom, and welcome to the Big Honker Podcast, brought to you by Dive Bomb Industries. I'm Jeff Stanfield with Andy, who's not so famous on this one.
Not today.
Not today. And with us today, an old friend of mine, ex-Major League Baseball player. He's an outfitter. He does the best Amazon fishing if you want to go. Mr. Jim Kern. Jim, how are you doing, sir?
Good, good, good. How long has it been?
I met you 28 years ago at the Lone Star Hunting Show in Dallas, Texas. I met you and Steve Barber the same day.
That's when you had hair and it was all dark.
Yes. I looked Italian then. Yeah. And I look like an old Italian. That's exactly right. 28 years ago. Probably you don't look much different. Your hair's a little wider.
Well, yeah, there's a lot less in the back, too, you know.
You doing the poof over?
Well, I haven't been doing the poof over. Actually, I really don't care. If people don't like it, such is life.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm the same kiss my ass attitude about everything. Now, you've got a book out. You just released a book. It's on Amazon. It's called The 70s and 80s Texas Rangers.
Tales of the Texas Rangers, yes.
For the 1970s and 80s. Now, I've heard a lot of these stories because I've known you for a long time. And I've spent a lot of time around you. But there's a lot of news stories I hadn't heard in that book. I read last night. This is how good this book is. I got this book last night. I tried to order it in Mexico, and I couldn't get my Amazon to work when I was in Mexico. So Jim gave me a book last night. I read 320, 400 pages long?
Yeah, about 396, yeah.
I read 320 pages last night, and about 11:15, I said, I got to go to bed. But it is a good book. It's lots of story. If you are if you like sports and you're a sporting fan of any time, you are around a lot of amazing people. How many Hall of Fame baseball players were you teammates with at one time or another?
Oh, my. Started teams, Gaylord Perry, Fergie Jenkins, Tom Seaver, Johnny Bench, Carlton Fisk, Steve Carlton, Mike Schmidt, just to name a few.
Did you play with Nolan?
I played against Nolan, never played with Nolan.
Okay, but you were around Nolan because of the Texas Rangers.
Yeah, he was with the Angels when I was with the Indians, and the Astros when I was with Cincinnati, so played against Nolan.
From reading the book, Gaylord Perry was quite the horse's ass, wasn't he?
Well, Gaylord really, he's from North Carolina. He was very opinionated. One of the strongest men you would ever meet. He was farm boy strong. He didn't have the definition of a Don Baylor or a Dave Parker. But, you know, if he lifted weights, it was in the form of a 70-pound bale of hay or a 100-pound sack of grist. He was just different type of strong. But things were going to be done Gaylord's way. And greatest guy on the earth. It's just when you greeted him and said hello, it was going to hurt, either your hand or your back or something. He was a prankster, big time strong and very aggressive, but one of my best friends in baseball.
Now, that kind of strength, that was typical back in those days. Like, you didn't see the workout warrior like you see today so much back then.
Right, yeah, and especially with pitchers, it was long and lean rather than bulked up. You know, when I played, I was 6'5" and some change and weighed about 185 pounds. My old joke is if I turned sideways, the only shadow on the ground was a pair of lips. But, you know, it was that type of what made you good and what made you strong was the durability. Mm-hmm. Fergie Jenkins, another good friend, had 30 complete games one year, 29 complete games the next year out of maybe 40 starts. Went out there every fourth day and threw a complete game. Mm-hmm. And now if they throw 6 innings, they're looking toward the bullpen. It was just a whole different philosophy.
Now, Gaylord was not someone that you wanted to be around him if you were hurt. Now, you tell a story about you on the training table as a rookie. Go ahead.
Well, there's several. I mean, one of my stories is I was getting a rub on my shoulder a day after I pitched, and he came in, "What the hell are you doing, rookie? Get off the training table." And I laughed at him, and he laid across me and dug his thumb into my rotor cuff up to about his elbow. And for 30 seconds, he just inflicted pain. But you never went back in the training room. I mean, he got his point across real quick. I remember Charlie Pride, who was part owner of the Rangers, and Charlie would come to spring training and hit a foul ball while he was hitting off his ankle. And the ankle was all swollen up, and they x-rayed it. Nothing was wrong. So they put him on a training table with ice, and Gaylord slithered in on his stomach behind Charlie and then reached up and grabbed it and squeezed it until Charlie was crying. I mean, this was just Gaylord's idea of fun.
Just a sadistic
Oh,
idea
yeah.
of fun.
But a great guy. I mean, just a whole different world. It was country boy humor.
Right.
And he was famous for throwing a spitball, right?
Well, he was supposedly famous for throwing a spitball. He didn't call it a spitball. He called it his Cuban forkball. And the thing was, if he did throw it, he threw it very little. But he had it in everybody's mind that he was going to throw it, and it really screwed up hitters' heads. They weren't on their game. They weren't concentrating. They were going to worry about throwing this ball that broke down very quickly, very late in front of the plate. So his idea wasn't get you to swing and miss. It was to hit a ground ball instead of a line drive.
Was that the same pitch that Mike Scott threw with the Astros?
Well, supposedly now. Yeah, it's all supposedly, you know. The idea, that the physics behind a wet one is with a fastball, with a dry ball, your fingers come off the ball first, your thumb last, so it's got a back spin. With a wet one, you lubricate your index and middle finger, and when you throw it, your fingers come off first, and your fingers come off first, and your thumb last. So you've got a forward roll to it. So when the ball gets in front of the plate, it sinks a little bit. Much like a curveball, but not that tighter rotation. And it looks just like a fastball.
Now, when you played baseball was the king of the hill. It was the big sport. And I've said this before on this podcast. I'm not a big baseball fan now because it bores me now compared to what it used to be like. But baseball's a great radio game.
Well, it is. The problem with baseball is in the 60s, they started coming up with this 100-pitch rule to try to protect the young kids from being overused. And the problem with the 100-pitch rule is that's usually about the 6th, 7th inning you've gone through 100 pitches. So they've taught the young kids to look in the bullpen for a reliever after about 6, 7 innings. Where in our time frame, you had guys like Fergie Jenkins, Gaylord, Perry, Nolan Ryan. The book on them that you would talk before the game is get them in the first 7 innings. Because if you don't get them in the first 7 innings, they tighten the screws in the last 2 innings. They're going to get that complete game and get you out. Now, everybody's looking toward the bullpen. We used to carry on the teams 5 starters, 5 relievers. Now they're carrying 5 starters, 7 relievers, which really wreaks havoc with the game because those extra 2 players you can't have on the bench, so you can't pinch hit for anybody. You can't pinch run for anybody because you don't have the personnel because they're all sitting in the bullpen. But this 100-pitch rule years and years ago is what has really changed the game. We had games with Fergie. If Fergie was pitching against Gaylord, that game would last an hour and a half. We'd be in the clubhouse drinking a beer. Now, a 3.5 hour game is a norm. And that, I really think, is what's killing the game, is it's just so long. Yeah. The manager goes out and changes pitchers 2-3 times. Just that philosophy, 100-pitch rule, has really wreaked havoc with the game.
So is this his spitball? I tried to pull up a YouTube video right there. I think we can see it. So is he just psyching? I don't know if he's going to throw it here, but is he just psyching because he's kind of getting sweat off of his?
Well, he's psyching. He would go through this whole thing. You'd see the cap, the hair, everything. And what Gaylord was doing was playing games with you, make you think he was going to throw it. See, here he is working again.
And he's just kind of getting in that batter's mindset. I think
he's just playing with him. You know, here. I don't think you can see the umpire check him, but the umpires would come out and check him because the hitters would always complain about Gaylord loading them up. So the umpires would come out and check him. Gaylord got to the point where they did this so much that he'd staple a little note inside of the neck. He'd staple another little note inside of his belt. And the note said, "Nope, not here."
Not here either. Yeah. But what was it? They would say that he had some lubrication
Vaseline.
of something.
Okay, see, again, he's playing with him.
Right.
This
And
was
that's
just
probably not even his
psychological.
spitball.
No, it's and again, if he threw it, that's like saying if Morgana came out in the field and gave the players a kiss.
These people today have no clue who Morgana is.
So that he would tape note, they would check his body for some lubricant, and he'd be like, nope, not here.
Right. They check the bill of his cap, up in the rim of his cap, inside of his shirt, inside of his belt here where you might rub your hand.
Right.
And, yeah, he'd have little notes there.
Did he ever get caught?
Not that I know of. I can't ever think of Gaylord ever getting thrown out of a game for throwing a wet one.
No, the Negroes did though, right? They had the file. They would scratch up scuff it up, right?
Jim did. Jim Perry did, and not Joe, but his brother did.
Field Negro.
Yeah, you would take a file or sandpaper and scuff up one little corner of the ball, and then you'd hold the scuff away from the way you wanted the ball to break, and it would actually run when it got in front of the plate. And catchers were as much as a fault as pitchers were. I knew a couple catchers, won't mention any name, that had a little piece of grinding disc
Oh, wow.
glued to the edge of their shin guards. And what they do is catch the ball,
And then,
twist it, and throw it back, and you had it scuffed. And you see umpires now, any foul ball, the ball's gone,
Right.
new ball. Because if you get a little bit of dirt in the seams, you can make the ball run.
so is that why you see pitchers constantly working that ball?
No, usually you're working the ball because the balls used to be horsehide, which had a rougher leather than the cowhide does. Now they're all cowhide, and what you're trying to do is rub it up so that it doesn't feel like a cue ball.
Right.
If you don't rub up a cowhide ball, it feels like a cue ball. I mean, there's nothing to
just
hang
slick.
on to, and so it slips in your hand.
Right.
You either put your fingers on a seam, and if you don't, it slips in your hand. It'll slip off your thumb. So you're rubbing it to get some type of texture to the outside of the ball so you can hang on to it easier.
Now, the average person is not throwing the ball 95 miles an hour like you guys can. And the ball movement and stuff at 95 miles an hour, you don't get that ball to do a lot of things that the guy who's throwing 60 can't get it to do.
Well, no, actually, the guy that throws 60 can get it to do stuff easier.
Really? That
Yeah,
surprises me.
because you've got more time for the ball to do stuff. You got to remember, back in our time frame in the 70s, there was two guns. There was a jugs gun, which was a fast gun, and then there was another gun, I don't remember what the name is. And the way they were faster guns than others is one would take the speed of the ball just before it got to the plate, which is the slowest it's going to be. A jugs gun registered the speed of the ball halfway to the hitter. And so in our time frame, your average fastball was 88, 90 mile an hour. Eckersley threw 92, 93 and could bring it. Nolan, 100, 98. I could throw consistently in the upper 90s. 3 All-Star games I played in, we rattled the guns at 100. But now, with the new guns, they get the speed of the ball once it leaves your fingers, which is the fastest. And so you're looking at 3-4 mile an hour difference there. So now everybody's throwing in the upper 90s, when in our time frame, that same guy would have been throwing in the low 90s on a jugs gun.
And it's all based off of where they take that miles per hour.
Yep, where they take the speed of the pitch from. Nolan registered throwing through a speed trap through 102 mile an hour. Adjusted to the new guns would be 108.
Wow.
Wow.
So, yeah.
What Randy Johnson, he'd throw the ball that hard, right?
Yeah, Randy could throw the ball in the upper 90s. The thing is Randy was 6'10".
Yeah.
His arms, I mean, I've got long arms. I wear a 17.5 neck, 38 sleeve. Randy had a 42-inch sleeve on his shirt. So you have the length of the lever arm, how fast you can accelerate through the length of the lever arm. The longer that lever arm is like an atlatl, the faster you're going to be able to throw. And he threw funky. He threw a low 3/4, so you see the ball coming from behind his shoulder. A big thing is how well a hitter can hit a ball is how quick they pick the ball up.
Right.
And when you got the ball coming out of your shoulder, you don't pick it up until it's halfway to you. So your time frame is reduced to half try and decide what the ball is in the strike zone, curveball, changeup, fastball, and then trying to hit it. So that funky motion, Dennis Eckersley, the same thing, threw a low 3/4, so the ball came out of your shoulder. You didn't pick the ball up right away. That has a big difference in it.
Now, let me ask you this. How much of that can you teach, and how much of that is that's just the way Randy threw the ball?
Well,
like, you look at kids today, and, like, you know, we can use, like, Aaron Rodgers. Like, you would never teach a kid to throw the football like Aaron Rodgers because he never sets his feet. Like, you would probably never teach a pitcher to throw a ball like Randy Johnson, where he's kind of got this 3/4 arm motion.
You really can't change somebody's motion with much extreme once they're about 15, 16, because you have the integration of how the muscles relate to each other as you throw. When you take somebody's sidearm and try to get them throw straight over the top, you'll probably generate arm problems because those muscles haven't developed that way in those vectors to be able to pitch that way. So what you do, I do work with kids, but I like the young kids. To me, if I get a teenager that mouths off to me, I'm going to strangle him. So I wouldn't be a good coach for that age group. The young kids, you teach them mechanics, how to bring the knee up, how to rotate, get your arm up on top. You teach good mechanics when they're young. Then you can do stuff when they get older. When you get somebody like Randy Johnson, you say, that's not the way to throw. You aren't going to change him.
Because I just think of, like, if a high school coach were to get Randy Johnson today, how much they would fuck him up. You know, like, by trying, like, nope, that's not how you do it. Like, you've got to do this, and then it's this over the top, rather than, I would be afraid, like, a high school coach would do serious damage to a kid like Randy Johnson.
And see, those are the poor coaches that only know how to do things one way, and that's their way. A good coach takes what they've got and works with it. You know, I never worked much on, I worked a lot on my fielding, which really sucked. I mean, ground ball back at me, I'd catch it, but usually in the chest and the legs, someplace, you know. And like Fergie Jenkins, you could shoot a 30-06 at him. He's going to catch a bullet before it gets to him and stuff it over his back. It's just he had a lot more coordination than I did. And so the same thing there is Mickey Rivers says, you don't work on your strengths, you can't improve something that's not there. Very good point, you know. I mean, very good point.
That's exactly how you're not going to make a kid. You can't take it. This is my thing towards Little League dads. I had 3 boys that played baseball. 2 of them were really good catchers. One of them was a really good Little League pitcher. But he wasn't ever going to throw the ball 100 miles an hour. He just didn't throw balls. He threw strikes. And if you're catching Little League and you get the ball over the plate and you don't ever walk nobody, you're going to be a pretty good Little League pitcher probably. And he could throw decent. But you wasn't going to ever make – you can't take a kid and make him throw hard if he can't do it.
No, I mean, it's just like a runner. You've got slow twitch muscles or you got fast twitch muscles. There's no in between. What you do is you try to work with what you've got. Back in our time frame, the sinker slider pitchers were prevalent. Randy Jones, Mike Cuellar, Pat Dobson, Jackie Brown, that we used to call it tricking him. He's a tricky left-hander because he's going to off-speed you, throw the ball in and out, make it do different things. They can teach you all that. They can teach you how to throw a curve. They can teach you how to throw a slider. They can't teach you how to throw a good fastball. So the scouts, looking at baseline, what we've got to work with, they want the hard throwers because they figure they can teach them everything else. But people like Fergie Jenkins and Harvey Haddix, who could sit a glove on a chair next to the plate and hit it 9 out of 10 times. I mean, I had no chance of doing that. I tell everybody I got credit for a no-hitter when I didn't hit anybody.
Tell the story about you not being tired in rookie ball when you threw the ball.
Well, I was an A-ball. I was 1968 in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Rock Hill Spinners. It's one of these, if you ever watch Bull Durham, it's that ballpark. It's got chicken wire behind the screen, you know, and I'm out there, and Pinky May was our manager. Pinky was in his early 60s. His son, Milt May, caught for the Pirates, and Pinky played third base for the Pirates in the 50s. And Pinky was about 5'10", and here I am 6'5", and he always wore this heavy coat, even in South Carolina in the summer, and would have his hands in the pocket. We always figured that's so he wouldn't strangle you when he came out to the mound, trying to keep his hands busy. And I've got a good moving fastball at night. It's moving to left field and right field and dead center, And Pinky comes out in the third inning. We're down about 4-0, and Pinky says to me, he says, "Emu, I got to take you out." And I looked at him. I said, "But Pinky, I'm not tired." And he spit a wad of tobacco on the ground, looked at me, and he says, "Yeah, but the goddamned outfielders are." It's been 45 years. I still haven't got a comeback for that one.
Who is better, Pudge Rodriguez or Johnny Bench?
I never was able to throw to Pudge Rodriguez. Bench, I threw to Fisk, Sundberg, Bench, and Bench was just head and shoulders of all of them behind the plate, because even Fisk and Sundberg, although they were extremely good catchers, if they called a breaking pitch outside and you crossed them up and threw a fastball up and in, they were jerked to get it. You could tell they'd been set up. Bench, you couldn't. He just would catch that ball like he was expecting it. JB was just so clean. Good arm to second. Pudge probably had a little better arm to second. Pudge probably had a better arm than 90% of the pitchers. And Bench was a better hitter. Pudge wasn't a bad hitter by any stretch of the imagination, but Bench could take that outside pitch, and instead of trying to rake it to left field and hit a fly ball to center field, he'd drive that outside to pitch to right center field. Bench didn't have any weaknesses. Usually you can identify, you can beat somebody inside, you can get him fish for a breaking ball down and away. Bench simply did not have any weak spots.
So Pudge's arm was that good?
Yeah, it was a little better than that.
So you think he could have pitched probably?
Yeah, a matter of fact, in my book I talk about it. Tom Grieve talks about, who's general manager for the Rangers at that time, when they signed Pudge. Pudge was a 15-year-old kid when they first saw him, and he was an also-ran. And they went down to look at some other kids, and their people in Puerto Rico were showing them other kids, and they were watching Pudge throw to second. And they went to the other people, says, "You better sign this little fat kid if you want to sign anybody else." I mean, he was that good at 15. He started out as a pitcher when he was young. His father moved him to catcher because he was afraid he was going to hurt the kids he threw so hard.
Wow.
He was an amazing. I grew up that era of the Rangers: Juan Gonzalez, Ruben Sierra, Nolan Ryan, Pudge Rodriguez. And Pudge, you could just, when he first come out, everybody talked about him. It wasn't a big secret they was going to bring him up. But when Gino got hurt,
Gino got hurt, and the interesting thing was in spring training, when Pudge was in spring training, Gino said, "We better not get hurt because we can't let him look at this kid." Gino got hurt. They brought up the kid.
Never left.
Yeah, game over.
Yeah, he was an amazing, and Gino had talked to me about that up here a few times. We talked about Pudge, but he could hum a ball. But I always wondered about him as a pitcher, because he could throw the ball to second base as fast as a pitcher could throw it to him to home plate. It seemed like.
Yeah, he on the guns he was throwing 90 to second base.
That's an amazing. He was just Johnny Bench was, I was a little kid when Johnny Bench was famous, and I didn't know much about Johnny Bench like I did Pudge. But it's hard to believe that anybody could be any better than Pudge. That's why I asked.
The thing that made both Fisk and Bench have an edge on Pudge is Pudge might have been 5'11", 6 foot. Bench and Fisk were 6'3", 6'4".
Big men.
Just bigger men. I mean, they'd stand in front of the plate when a guy coming around third. They wouldn't stand on the plate. They would stand 3-4 feet up the line. You got to run through my ass to be able to get to home plate if I have the ball or not.
Right.
And that size makes a huge difference.
Should Pete Rose be in the Hall of Fame?
As far as 4,500 hits, hell yes. As far as flaunting baseball rules, I mean, when he admitted to gambling on games, that's death, because if you're going to gamble, then it's only logical that you bet against your team. And so consequently, as manager, Pete Rose will be inducted into the Hall of Fame the day after he dies.
You think so?
Yes, yes. They're not going to give him the honor while he's living and doing it.
I think Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame, and I know where you're coming from. If he bet against himself, then I have a big problem with it. It's never been proven that he bet against himself.
But he has admitted betting.
Yes.
And so you've got to take that one step further.
Yes, I mean there's only two ways to do it: for or against.
Yeah.
I think Kurt Schilling should be in the Hall of Fame. I think he's there because of politics, and I think that's a bunch of bullshit.
Well, he is definitely there because of politics. Not there, shall we say? Yeah. To me, Kurt is borderline. I mean, he's not a first ballot type of Hall of Famer. Bonds and Clemens. When Clemens has got 7 Cy Young awards, Bonds has got 2.5 million home runs. I mean, yes, but again, the PED stuff, it's really tough, because in any other walk of life, you do whatever you can do to enhance your profession. You get a master's and a doctorate to be able to be the best you can in that field. The PEDs, you took these to be the best you could be. Really tough here. What's legal? You're telling me you don't think Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth would have taken PEDs if they were available?
They took whatever was available at that time.
Hot dogs and beer and women. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Pussy will make you do a lot of things.
Yeah, good and bad.
but so yeah, I agree with you. And you're hitting a round ball with a round bat.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys on PED. I'm gonna tell you what, you can take a wrestler that's on PEDs and steroids, and he can't hit a fucking home run. And Barry Bonds hit 800 of them or whatever he hit.
Yeah, 775 or something absurd. The thing about Barry, one problem I had with Barry wasn't so much of PEDs. It was all the armor he wore on his upper arm and his forearm.
Derek Dickerson of baseball.
Which allows you to cheat into the plate. And if you get hit there, no biggie. And so you take that away from the inside half of the plate, away from the pitcher. The other thing I've read here lately is that was designed so he couldn't roll his arm. His arm was not allowed to roll over and dissipate torque. So you hit the ball, and that kept the
carries through,
which generated a lot more power. Now that mechanically, mechanically, that's something to look at if that is really true.
Right.
Because now it gave him an unfair advantage through mechanics.
It fixes a flaw that he had in his mechanics.
What
about now we're seeing guys that have face guards?
Well,
I mean, and that's also, I mean, you're taking.
I don't blame him for that.
Well, no, but you're making that batter feel more comfortable on the inside stuff.
Well, you hit him once in the face mask, and it's going to get rid of that comfort factor. But all of us pitchers, yes, we did intentionally hit people occasionally. We didn't aim at their head. Nobody had any respect for a headhunter as far as a pitcher. To come up and in was okay to get him off the plate. But I don't have any problem with the face mask. I mean, personally, I thought they ought to dig a bunker behind the mound so when they hit a damn line drive back, you had a place to dive.
So Don Baylor owes you a couple ass whoopings, don't he?
Probably only about 11.
Now, we talked about I lost my damn train of thought. I was going to ask you something about.
That's what happens when you get old, you know?
Shit. Oh, I know what it was. Me and you were at a hunting show in Houston long time ago. And the Giants were playing the Astros. And you said, hey, do you want some tickets to go see Barry Bonds play? And so me and Tony and somebody else went with me to the game. We went to the game. And I said, do you want to go? You said, I have been in person 3,785 games. I am not going to go to another baseball game and watch a baseball game.
Well, it's pretty much like you saying somebody, you want to go watch them call ducks?
No.
Right.
Don't think so.
No. And Barry Bonds hit a home run. It was 1-0. Most boring baseball game I've ever been to in my life. But the Astrodome was comfortable because it was the first time I'd been to an indoor baseball game.
Well, and that's one thing interesting about baseball. The powers that be now think a 9-8 game is more interesting than a 3-2 game. The problem you have, a 9-8 game is going to be 3.5 hours.
Right.
People get bored. A 3-2 game is going to be 2-hour game. And so, to me, Who drew the fans? Yeah, Mickey Mantle, Ted Williams did, but Nolan Ryan pitched. How many more fans came to see him? Bob Gibson, Fergie Jenkins, Gaylord Perry. They came to see them dominate.
Yeah, I went to a game in Arlington when Nolan Ryan faced Randy Johnson. I think the final game the score was 1-0.
Yep.
And there was about 30 strikeouts in the game. But we went to that game to watch Nolan Ryan play against Randy Johnson.
Yeah.
And the game was exactly what we wanted to see. And then one time I took Andy out of school and we went and seen maybe Kevin Brown pitch against Jack McDowell or Randy Johnson or somewhere. And it was a 1-0 game, too, in the same type deal. I think Juan Gonzalez had a home run, but it was because it was going to be a really good pitcher's game, and I wanted to see it. But I went to watch Randy Johnson pitch 2 or 3 times because there was always that chance to be a no-hitter.
Yeah, that's correct, and people went to see Nolan big time like that.
Tony was at Nolan's 6th no-hitter.
I think the most interesting thing is Nolan had 7 no-hitters, but he had 21 one-hitters.
Yeah.
Wow.
21 times he missed that by 1 hit, But to watch people, and again, one of my favorite people is Fergie Jenkins as far as watching him pitch. With Gaylord Perry and Nolan Ryan and Randy Johnson, I mean, it was one-on-one, mano-y-mano, here we go. With Fergie, he'd pitch, and the people would have the most comfortable 0 for 4 they ever had in their life. They'd open the paper the next day and go, 0 for 4, I'm sure I got a hit last night. Fergie just got your ass out. I mean, it was real simple. I remember one year with Texas, he gave up 38 home runs one season. 31 of them were single shots, solo shots. With nobody on base, he was coming at you. A solo home run does not hurt you. Mm-hmm. Walking 2 guys and giving up a dinger is going to kill you.
Yes, it will.
So what are your feelings on how we could shorten the game up a little bit? I mean, number one, they start spring training here in a couple weeks.
Well, they're on strike.
Oh, they are on strike?
Are they officially on strike right now?
Yeah, I don't expect to see baseball until June or July.
Maybe that's the answer, because it goes from March to mid-October. That's a long time to keep somebody's attention span. Like Days of Our Lives is about, but that's just a long time. And then you get to the dog days of summer and it's too hot to go to the ball games, and it's just.
I think the big thing right now is through expansion, you have created a lot more teams than there were 20, 25 years
right.
ago. You've reduced the minor leagues 60%, the number of people coming up. So what you've got is a scenario where you don't have enough quality pitching. Mm-hmm. You don't have enough quality catching. Your 7th, 8th, 9th guy in the bullpen should be in Double-A.
Right.
And so you don't have that quality. You've got enough hitting to go around, and the fielding is pretty good. But if you really want to make the game more interesting, you need to get rid of half a dozen teams, mm-hmm. which they aren't going to do because of the dollar factor.
Correct.
They're talking about expansion, which dilutes the pool even more.
Right.
But no, there is going to be no way to speed up the game because, again, of this 100-pitch rule, your pitchers are not used to pitching a lot of innings. And so consequently, you're going to make 2, 3, 4 pitching changes. Every time you do that, you ate 15 minutes.
Right.
By the time you bring him in, by the time you get him out, everything else. And TV dictates everything.
Sure.
You got commercials here, you got commercial breaks there. And so TV is dictating all the dollars.
Because I just look right now, football is the sport in America. And when you look at football, about the time people start losing interest, playoff implications are on the line. And then the season's wrapping up, and then the playoffs get started. With baseball, as me as a casual viewer, I watch April, a little bit in May, and then when the playoff hunt starts. Late September, mid-September, late September is when, as a casual watcher,
football has been saved by fantasy football. I think everybody plays fantasy football, and I think
by betting, correct?
That is saved. That is saved football. If it wasn't for fantasy football, all this, the BLM, Black Lives Matter, and all the social injustices and shit, they would have lost. I think half their people and they lost a lot of people anyways. But I think that fantasy football kept people in. You know, I don't give a crap about all that other crap. I don't want to hear you talk about how hard it is. I grew up poor, so you're not gonna make me feel bad for you. But I think people got sick of that shit. But I think fantasy football saved that. Baseball is a freaking marathon.
Baseball's a marathon, but it always has been 162 games. The interesting thing about baseball is keeping your body together for 162 consecutive games. That's the one thing that makes baseball different than anything else. Football plays once a week. Basketball maybe 3 times a week. Baseball is every day. And so you look at the athleticism of going out there every day and playing 9 innings. Somebody like Fergie Jenkins, Gaylord, pitching every 4 days. I mean, and it's tough to pitch every 4 days. The day you pitch, the next day you're big time sore. My wife used to touch me on the back and laugh when I jumped, because wherever you touch it, you're sore. The second day, you usually throw batting practice or on the side to loosen up. The third day you rest, the fourth day you're in there. 5-day rotation is much easier on the body than a 4-day rotation. And you look at some of these guys back in the time frame of Bob Gibson, Fergie, Gaylord, Drysdale, they pitched occasionally on 3-day rotations. And for going out there and trying to get it done, that is hard on the body.
There's no doubt about that at all. I mean, it's hard on the guys. You work a lot more. You play a lot more games. And the guys that are playing positions in the field, they're playing 6 days a week, play a game. Now, baseball also, and I've said this so many times, radio was good for baseball. Man, I listened to so many baseball games driving down the road when I was a kid growing up. We go fishing. You'd have the radio on and stuff. And I think less people listen to the radio now, and I think that's hurt baseball too.
I think it has too. And the thing about baseball, and it's how long it takes it, is the world now with the internet is immediate gratification.
Correct.
And so a marathon isn't nearly as interesting to the kids coming up and trying to get interested in the game. And you know, there used to be baseball fields all over the place.
Yep.
You don't see them in town anymore.
We have hell. Knox City, when Andy was second grade here at Knox City, we had 140 kids in high school, and we had 4 Little League baseball teams just in town. When Zach was in town, we was into 2 Little League baseball teams. When Payne was at town growing up, we had 1 Little League baseball team. We had, we have to pare down to 12 kids or 9 kids or whatever it was, or 12 kids to play baseball, 14 at the most usually. But that's what we're down to is 1 team, and we're lucky to get 1 team now.
Well, and you look at the guys in high school. You're trying to impress the girls in high school, okay? Yeah. Where's the immediate gratification? Football, basketball, not baseball.
No, baseball is really hard.
Baseball's an afterthought.
Baseball's a rich kid sport now.
Yeah, kind of, right?
With summer league.
It's all middle class kids. Like, you go to baseball, like we did some travel baseball with Zach and Payne. Well, it wasn't cheap to do it. You go to Brownwood and you go play in a tournament for a weekend, or you go to Dallas and play in a tournament for a weekend. You get hotels Friday, Saturday night, and you stay all. I mean, a poor kid's parents can't do that.
No, and I think a lot of the travel baseball is more for the parents than it is for the kids.
Bingo. I agree with you 100% on that. Kids shouldn't be playing 75 baseball games in the summer.
And that's what I was going to ask you.
And they shouldn't be playing one sport.
No,
that
that's
was another
exactly
thing
right.
I was going to ask you.
Did you see in the Super Bowl they had a stat of there's 100? How many guys are on a pro football team?
I think
it's 55?
52-man roster.
52-man roster, 104 guys. I think 98 of them were multiple sport athletes in high school.
Yeah,
and probably 3 sports. I mean, not just football or baseball. Probably football, basketball,
baseball,
everything.
track, a lot of things. But it showed the kids. It showed how many, and it was like 98 of them played. There was very few that just played just football.
And travel baseball relegates you to one sport.
Yep.
Right. So when did that craze start? Like who thought of like, okay, if I get my kid to just focus on this one particular, whether it's baseball or not, number one, I would think the kid would get burned out faster because baseball's always on his mind. Yeah, you look at the kids, the Tommy John surgery in 15, 16-year-old kids has just skyrocketed. And that's got to be because of Summer League Baseball. You're never giving that arm a break.
Well, and the other thing is the mechanics of throw the ball hard, throw the ball hard. It's a lot harder on the body than get people out by tricking them.
You know, everybody thinks they're Bobby Witt's son. Everybody thinks their kid's going to be the next Bobby Witt son. If for people that don't know, Bobby Witt played with baseball for Jim. Or played? Did you and Twitter play together? Either?
No. Twitter was after I was.
But Bobby and Jim are friends. Me and Bobby are friends. Bobby's son was the #1 player taken in the draft. What, 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
And he plays for the Royals. I think he's a shortstop. But everybody thinks their kid's going to be that kid, and most of them are not.
Well, and the other example is Buster Posey. But you stop and look at the number of kids that play in the major leagues that played travel baseball. It is very insignificant. I mean, your better players, the majority of them now are coming out of the South American, Latino countries because that's what they do. They don't sit there and play Nintendo 8 hours a day. They're outside playing sports, and they're playing multiple sports. And so that's where your better athletes are coming from now.
Well, I look at my kid. He's 7, and he's 2 years ago he's just now old enough to play Little League basketball.
Is that what you're calling that?
Whatever. What is it? Little dribblers. I'm sorry.
It's a horrible is what it is.
But
little dribblers, that sounds like me in old age here.
But you look at him who's never picked up a basketball out of boredom and gone out and shot hoops or any of that, and you look at him versus kids that's their entertainment. The aggression factor, he doesn't have any aggression. He's not aggressive at all, and it's because you're like, God damn it, go after the fucking ball. But he's a kid that's kind of privileged. He hunts a lot. And the kid that was bored that went and shot hoops or threw a baseball with his brother because they had nothing else to do, I mean, that kid's going to blow my son away.
So you giving up on Reese being a professional athlete already?
No, not absolutely not. But it's just we saw better, more natural athletes 50 years ago because that was your entertainment. If you wanted to be entertained after school, you'd go shoot basketballs or you'd throw the baseball.
So he's not going to be in the NBA, though.
We would play baseball all day long, 6 days a week. I mean, how many pitches you threw. You just built arm strength. By limiting them to 100 pitches, you're not building the arm strength you need to be able to pitch 9 innings. And it goes back so far to little kids that you've got no chance of ever changing it.
You're older than me, but you're just a little bit younger than Dad. How old are you?
I'm older than dirt. I was born in the first half of the last century.
When were you born?
49.
49. So you're 5 years younger than Dad was. But you grew up in that same generation. Guys could take an ass whipping then.
And we did.
Yeah. And when it was over, it was over.
Yeah.
It was the end of the world. It wasn't the end of the world. You wasn't going to go shoot somebody and stuff. And kids played outside. I grew up playing outside, riding a bike, playing outside. You get scrapes and scabs. You did all the time. You didn't go home and Mama didn't baby you and shit. They didn't run you to the emergency room every time something happened. It was just part of life growing up. We've lost that.
And you went out looking to eat dirt.
Yeah, I mean that's right. But the kids, but baseball was built for that generation of stuff. That's what it was for. The Sandlot movie, those kids played baseball and stuff. If you did a Sandlot movie today, the Disney classic, and you redid it, all them kids will be inside playing fucking games. Mm-hmm. They don't go outside anymore, and that's what we've lost. And Andy's right about Reese. Reese is a great kid, but his interests are not to go out. When I was a little kid growing up, we had a football yard, a football field in the front yard. We had a basketball goal, and it was we were either playing football. And if you didn't have enough for a whole team, you played Smear the Queer, which was the name where one kid run the ball against everybody tried to tackle him.
Yeah.
Or you played basketball or baseball. And we went from one sport to another sport to another sport, and everybody did it. Kids today, you got to beg kids to come out and sign up. Are we doing baseball sign-ups yet?
Yeah, Thursday.
Thursday's baseball sign-ups. We'll have to beg enough kids to come sign up to play ball. Or they'll all play T-ball, and then parents don't want to jack with it. The parents are another big problem in our country, too. Parents don't want to sacrifice an hour or 2 hours a day to take their kid to practice. Or if they want to take them to practice, they drop them off and let the coach take care of them for 2 hours.
And then bitch at the coach during game day.
All the time. Yeah. That used to wear me out. Which I didn't take very many ass chewings from parents because I was, if you want to fucking coach, come over here and coach. They didn't want to coach. But when you were a kid, you probably had the same Little League coach the whole time.
Yeah, we had the same Little League coach, and The thing is, I was never a good athlete. When I was 9 years old, I could throw the ball harder than 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds could. But I was always a poor athlete. I mean, when I was 14, I was 6'4" and weighed 158 pounds.
God almighty.
I mean, I couldn't stuff a basketball till I was 22 when I had enough muscle mass to be able to control the body. And so I was always the last kid picked for any team. Doesn't matter what we were doing. If we were making mud balls, I was the last guy picked to make a mud ball.
You were the tall, smart kid.
No, well, tall.
You have a chemistry degree, so you're not dumb.
Yeah, I've got a chemistry degree, but I can't spell it, so we have problems, you know. Yeah. But, yeah, you know, this book I wrote, I'm sure I have English teachers rolling over in their grave. You know, I failed spelling in 7th grade, flat up F. You know, so chemistry was one thing I really enjoyed. English, you know, I don't speak Spanish. I speak a little bit of Spanish and a little bit of Portuguese for all the fishing we do in South America. But basically, I can get fed and order a beer. That's about it in any language. And I can do a little bit better in English.
I'm looking this up. It says Tommy John surgery is performed in 57% of all Tommy John surgeries are kids 15 to 19 years old.
That's crazy.
Over half of all the Tommy John surgeries performed are on teenagers.
The biggest problem with coaches, the majority of them have a very good heart in coaching, but they've got no idea about mechanics.
Right.
And they try to teach kids mechanics, what they think is right, or read on the internet by some so-called expert, and you're just hurting things. Mechanics are very simple, but everything's got to be in sync. If you don't rotate enough in your wind-up, you don't give your hand time to turn from facing down to facing up to bring your elbow through. Little things like this that you can fine-tune. Kids jumping and not giving themselves time, not following through and throwing only with their arms. But the majority of the young coaches, very good heart, but don't have the mechanics. And they try to push this, throw harder, throw harder, throw harder, and the kids get all out of sync. Mm-hmm. The worst thing you can do is to rush. When you rush, you don't throw harder. You work harder, but you don't throw harder. Everything's got to be in sync. And trying to get them to throw hard, which is the big thing now. If you don't throw 90, you ain't shit.
Right.
I mean, is destroying a lot of arms.
The mentality of a pitcher, is that anything that can be taught, or is that something that's just born into that kid?
You've got to have some fire to be able to pitch. You get your ass kicked today, you can't let it roll over in tomorrow and start doubting yourself. Yeah, starting pitchers started once every 4 or 5 days, so they were strong and had time to get their act together between starts. Relief pitchers, you've got to be a little bit off-center to be a good relief pitcher, because you're down in the bullpen. You aren't part of the team. You're a spectator for 7, 8 innings.
Right.
I mean, you're down there eating nachos, drinking Cokes, you know, and then suddenly you're in the game. You got to be able to throw the switch quickly, and you've got to be able to pitch consecutive days.
Right.
And you've got to have a forgiving arm. You got to be able to get loose very quick. And you've got to have a Rottweiler attitude, like, I died yesterday, but we're going to kill your ass today. And those are hard to come by. There's a lot of guys that just don't have the attitude to be a relief pitcher.
That's what I was thinking about, because, like, you know, with a starting pitcher, you look at the rotation. I'm pitching here, I'm pitching Sunday and Wednesday. You know those are your days.
Right.
With a relief pitcher, drop of a hat. Hey, this situation, we need Emu. Get him going. And it might happen again tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, can you see the manager calling down, get Kern up? Well, I didn't get 8 hours sleep last night. Get somebody else up.
Right.
You know, like, it's let's go.
Yeah.
Balls to the wall.
How long would it take you? What's the least amount of time in the bullpen you could feel confident stepping onto the mound?
It was probably the time y'all gave all the balls away.
Well, we did that once upon a time, too. There's a story in my book about we used to get 6 new pearls, we called them, new baseballs. They take down the bullpen to warm up every game. And Old Ranger Stadium, our bullpen was sunk halfway in the ground, so it was half above, half below, and right against the bleachers. And these little kids would come up and say, "Mister, can I have a baseball?" and you'd look up at their parents sitting there smiling and say, well, you get us some nachos and a Coke, and we'll give you a baseball. Well, we did this every night. We traded away 3-4 balls every night to the kids. And we had one night where we're in the 8th inning, and Johnny Ellis, our bullpen catcher, decides he needs a Coke. So he trades our last baseball away to the kids. And I said to Johnny, I said, what the hell are we going to do if we got to warm up? He said, it's 7-1. Medich will get him out. 9th inning, 1 out, 7-4. A couple guys on base, and the phone rings. Get Kern up. So I looked at Johnny. I said, what the hell are we going to do now? Ask the kid for the ball back? We look in the stands. They're gone.
Of course.
And so Johnny says, it's dark down here. We can fake it. So I get up on the mound and fake like I'm throwing, and Johnny is throwing it back to me. And we would have gotten away with it, but the fans were laughing so hard. That night cost me $500.
Oh shit.
Yeah, but I would have thrown it away anyways. But I could get comfortable throwing 8 pitches on the mound. When you came into the game, that's what you got was 8 pitches. And I had a very elastic arm, and when I wasn't throwing the ball good, I was throwing 92, 93.
Mm-hmm. So it still was better than most.
Yeah.
A guy like Charlie Huff. Charlie Huff didn't look like a pitcher. Or doesn't look like an athlete, I guess I could say. He threw a knuckleball. Did he have the fire in him like Nolan Ryan did when he pitched, or was he just kind of business-like, work-like?
No, Charlie was an interesting individual. As you said, you put 100 people in the room, tell them to pick out the athlete, and Charlie'd be number 99 they picked. Charlie had a bad hip, and so he couldn't run, which was our conditioning. And so you'd see in the middle of a game, you'd walk in the clubhouse, Charlie be doing his conditioning. He was sitting on a bike, pedaling the bike, drinking a vodka tonic, smoking a cigarette, and watching TV. This was conditioning. This was Charlie conditioning. Has the most wins of any Ranger ever, most innings pitched.
He's a great pitcher.
Charlie was a great pitcher. I mean, he ate catchers. The catchers didn't play catch with him; they played fetch. Mm-hmm. It was a different world. But Charlie had a fire in him. It wasn't visible, but Charlie had a fire in him. I love Charlie. I tell a story in the book about the first time he got traded to Texas, and second night after the game, Charlie says, he says, I'm not sure if I can find my house. I'm over by the lake. And I said, well, Charlie, where you live? He told me, and I said, hell, I only live about 4 blocks from you. Here's my phone number, and I wrote down Emu and then my phone number and gave it to him. If you have any trouble, call me. I'll be glad to come over. So Charlie tells me 2 days later his wife's doing laundry, and she picks up his shirt and pulls this number out, and she looked at Charlie and says, God damn it, Charlie, you've been in town 2 days. Who in the hell is Emma? It took me 2 days to get Charlie in hot water.
So he threw a no-hitter and lost it in the 9th or 10th inning, if I remember right, on a pass ball and something else.
Surely you just.
Yeah.
Pass ball with Charlie?
The younger people, they don't realize he threw a knuckleball. I guess Tim Wakefield was the last knuckleball pitcher to really be successful in the majors. And, he'd throw the ball, but he'd have 7 pass balls a game or something.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't Gino give up 6 pass balls in one game or something?
Gino set a couple records for most pass balls in the season with 35, I think, and most in a game with either 6 or 7.
And that was all Charlie.
And you can't blame Gino. Gino was a pretty good catcher, but my Lord. I mean, Charlie had these special made gloves that looked like a 2-gallon basket that he'd give the catchers to catch. And with Charlie, the ball never did the same thing twice. When it came in, it'd dip, it'd dive, it'd shoot to the left, it'd shoot to the right. I mean, Gino, after catching him, would have bruises all over his body.
Why do we not see more knuckleball pitchers? Because it's not hard on the arm either.
It's not hard on the arm. It's hard to get your act together to get it over the plate. And it's and like everything else, they want to see speed. The managers don't like it. Just why you don't see any bunts, you don't see any hit and runs. They figure a home run is where they want to be, so they've got everybody swinging from their ass. And, I mean, eliminate the shift. Come on, when you got the third baseman behind second, bunt the ball down third base and get on base.
Yeah, it's easy hit.
Yeah, but they want a home run. That's why the shift works, because everybody's going to pull the ball. It's the hitters not being able or not wanting to make that shift.
See, I think if you can go back in time in sports, like if you went back and played the NBA and you took the NBA guys today and they played against the guys in the 70s, I think the guys today with the rules they have would beat the guys from the 70s. Now, if they could foul like they did in the 70s, I think, or the 80s, I think the Detroit Pistons would kill whoever's the champion now just because they would hack the shit out of them into the physical part. Football, if you played the NFL guys, and if Terry Bradshaw and the Steelers of the 70s played the Rams today, the Rams would beat them by 40 points, I think. It's just a faster, bigger game. But baseball, if you took the 70 baseball players and they played today, I think the baseball players from the 70s would win today.
Oh, I think so too. But then back then you had 150 minor league clubs feeding 22, 24 major league clubs. So your talent was so much better at the upper level. I mean, and so that's going to be a big part. I think your average talent back then was considerably better than it is now.
But in the other sports, I don't think so. Basketball guys are taller and bigger and faster, and football players are definitely bigger and faster. But baseball is timeless.
Well, to me, basketball these days is guerrilla ball. They simply don't call fouls. Back in our time, you had palming a ball. When you turn the ball over, now that's what everybody does is palm the ball to be able to move. Steps. Now you can take, 3-4 steps to the basket when you're stuffing? Mm-hmm. You took 2, and it was traveling. It's just a whole different game.
I went to a basketball game last night. Same thing. Kid literally was dribbling. He went to make a move. He took the ball like this, flipped it over, and just carried on about his day.
Yeah.
It's like, what the hell are we doing here?
It's a different.
That's everybody sees it.
But see, baseball hasn't changed. Strike zone's the same. Baseball's the same. That's what I'm saying. And I think the guys back then were better at their trade than they are today. I think it's the only sport that's the same, because players may be faster now, but they don't have the basics down. They don't play baseball like they did before, like the bunt. How many guys like stealing bases? Ricky Henderson, Lou Brock, Vince Coleman, Otis Nixon. I don't even know. I don't watch baseball much no more, but I bet the guy who's led the league in steals last year didn't have 50 to 60 steals.
No.
There would be 2 guys on some teams that have 50 or 60 steals.
Well, that's because little ball no longer exists. It's long ball.
Yep.
And so you don't have the bunts getting on base. Rod Carew, if he was 0 for 3 in the 9th inning, there was a 90% chance he was dragging a bunt because he wasn't going 0 for 4.
Right.
47 last year steals.
And
40 was the next. 32 after that.
That's the way home runs used to be back in the day, because when I grew up, if someone hit 30 home runs a year, that was a good season.
A real good season.
And now you'll have guys hit 40 home runs by All-Star break almost. They always fade away before they get to the end, but, just a different game now.
Well, you're not allowed to pitch inside. You get screamed at if somebody looks like they're going to get hit.
Right.
I mean, I used to have managers come out and tell me to hit the people. Frank Robinson came out once in Cleveland and looked at me and said, hit the next guy or don't come back to the dugout.
Yes, sir.
Turned around the left, like, okay, I spent 6 years in the Marine Corps. This sounds like a gunnery sergeant. We can make this work.
What did this guy do that you had to hit him for?
The guy before him was beating our brains out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Just whack them and let's get in
whack.
their head a little bit?
No,
Because
no,
baseball, shit carries over from series to series. Like, you do us wrong here, we're going to remember it, and we're going to hit you.
The best thing was Pete Lecoq. Pete Lecoq hit the last home run off Bob Gibson. 5 years later, they're playing an old-timers game, and Gibson hit Lecoq. You got to love that.
Tell Andy about the 10-cent beer night.
Oh, 10-cent beer night in Cleveland. The thing was the Rangers in Cleveland never got along to begin with, and they had a fight in Texas. Somebody got hit, somebody got retaliatory hit, and blah, blah, blah. Had a fight in Texas. So they go back to Cleveland for the next series, and they're talking to Billy Martin, who was a manager of Texas. And Billy says, I'm not worried about a fight. There's not enough people come to Cleveland Stadium to cause trouble anyways. Well, the Cleveland radio starts getting on this and really promoting it. So 5 days later, they have 10-cent beer night in Cleveland. You could buy no more than 6 beers at a time, 12-ounce beers. Yeah, and they sold 60,000
Holy shit.
beers that night, had 20,000 people, a lot of them young kids. Well, of course, here we go. You start whacking each other, and it was inevitable. And then Burroughs was playing right field, and a fan jumped out of the stands and grabbed his hat, and Jeff cold-cocked him.
Was he a big guy, Burroughs?
He was stocky. He was maybe 6'1", but big upstairs. And then the fans started pouring on the field. And that night they had like 30 streakers. They had half a dozen girls run on the field and pull up their blouse, and
Good times.
Good times. Everybody's drunker than dirt. They're having a grand time. And the fans start pouring on the field, and everybody's hitting everybody. They're trying to get off the field, and Nestor Shylock was an umpire, and he had to call the game because they stole all the bases. The fans picked up all the bases, and one of the best lines of that night was a reporter the next day in the Cleveland Plain Dealer said, "And the fans stole more bases than the baseball players did last night." Yeah. So it had built up. The radio in Cleveland had really saturated everybody to come out and raise hell with the Rangers. And so, it was a perfect storm.
Back then, did the umpires, you had the same? I went to a baseball game with you one time in Arlington, and the umpires, you waved and talked to them and stuff. You guys got to have quite a relationship with some of them guys, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you had a good relationship to them. I won't mention the umpire's name, but one of my biggest things was my first year we're playing against Oakland. And I get called in the game. I'm rookie, and the umpire, home plate umpire, comes out to the mound, rubs up the ball, and says, "I hate this son of a bitch. Just get the ball near the plate." And he walks back, and who walks the plate but Reggie Jackson?
Oh, wow.
I threw the first pitch about 3 inches outside. Strike one! And Reggie just starts screaming. Throw the second pitch about 3 inches inside. Strike two, and Reggie's livid. I throw the third pitch. Above the letters for strike three. Reggie throws a bat, gets thrown out of the game. But and you learned as a kid, don't screw with the umpires because you will pay.
So your first player you ever faced in the majors, you struck out Reggie Jackson?
No. This was my first year.
Oh, okay.
My first year in the big leagues. I tell a story about Hank Aaron too. One of the greatest home run hitters ever. That Hank in spring training, 74. I'm a rookie. He's with Milwaukee, and I've got him 3-1. And I throw a good 95-mile-an-hour gasser right down the middle of the plate, and he takes this weak-ass swing at it. Really looked bad, and I thought to myself, man, I could run the ball by this old man. I wind up through the same pitch about 3 miles an hour faster. He hit it so hard off the left center field wall, the center fielder held him to a single.
Wow.
And, I'm kind of like, you got to be shitting me. And I look over at first base, Hank, and Hank just goes, he set my ass up like you wouldn't believe.
Wow. So he set you up.
He set me up.
Let me take a half-ass attempt at this, and the young kid.
You're going to throw it again.
This young kid, he's going to get all cockstrong on me and really run it in here, and I'm going to be waiting.
Did you ever strike him out in a real game?
I did. I struck him out that year, and it was amazing. In Milwaukee, I tried to throw a slider low and away at 2-2 and threw a backup slider on the inside corner, faked him out for a called strike three.
That's pretty impressive, though.
No, it wasn't. That wasn't the pitch I wanted to throw. It wasn't where I wanted to throw it.
You struck out Hank Aaron, though.
I struck out Hank Aaron, but the caveats are what's great.
Who gave you the most hell above anybody you played against?
Mark Belanger. Blade, shortstop for the Orioles, best shortstop in the world, lifetime batting average of 210.
Oof.
Blade hit 714 off me in 13 years.
Wow.
But he hit 500 off Nolan.
Well, that makes you feel better.
There you go.
He never took a full swing. He hit the ball just hard enough to get it over the infield, but not to the outfielders. Mm-hmm. I tried everything with Blade. I hit him. Did everything I could. I could come in the game in the 8th inning. You could have Boog Powell, Frank Robinson, and Brooks Robinson on the bench. And who would I see? Blade.
Every time.
Oh, man. And Carlton Fisk, I had trouble getting Fisk out. He was real quick inside.
What was Don Zimmer like?
The gerbil?
Yep.
I didn't care much for the gerbil. He was entirely old school. One of his nicknames was Popeye.
Is he a horse's ass?
I thought so.
Yeah, he either come across as you either really like him or he was a horse's ass.
Yeah, I didn't care for Zim.
What about Yogi Berra?
Yogi was a Yogi Bear and Mickey Rivers are the same too. I mean, Yogi had 10 rings, which is unreal. And anything Yogi touched financially turned to gold. But Yogi was one of the greatest guys there was. You can't say anything but a plus for Yogi.
Now, in the book, you talk about a guy that did not have really good English. I think he was a black guy, and I can't remember his name.
Mickey Rivers.
Yeah. So, he had some country. He had country language, didn't he?
Yeah, well, Mickey was from the streets of Miami.
Okay.
And Mickey wasn't dumb by any stretch of the imagination. It's just his alliteration of the English language was awesome. And it was street language. And I can remember when Mickey got traded from New York to Texas, and George Steinbrenner and Billy Martin were always arguing. And Randy Galloway from the Dallas paper said to Mick, Mick, well, why didn't you and George Steinbrenner and Billy Martin ever have any problems? And Mick says, as George and Billy's nice. We's two of a kind. Mick couldn't play one day. He had an inflamed knee. And again, the press messing with him said, Mick, you're not going to play today? And Mick says, nah, I couldn't play. I got tenderitis.
The Galloway was at Fort Worth first, right? Then he went to Dallas, then back to Fort Worth. Is that right?
No, Galloway was with the Dallas Morning News, and then very late went to Fort Worth, I believe, briefly. Jim Reeves, Revo was the Fort Worth. He's the one I ate his book on the plane.
I'll tell you what, the final 4 pages, right?
Yeah.
He read a whole book, and Jim ate the 4 pages.
Why?
Well,
so he couldn't finish it.
Revo had been reading this book on about 3 road trips. It was John Dean, about 1,200 pages. And I had just screwed up a game in Baltimore. I was 6-0 and had guys on first and second, and we were up by a run, and they bunted down third, and I got over there real quick, grabbed the ball, and threw it to third, and Buddy Bell was standing next to me.
And Buddy Bell was their third baseman, so there was no third baseman.
So no third baseman. And my first thought was, if I threw it harder, the left fielder could have got it quicker. Well, we end up losing the game, and it's really sad because we lost the whole series then. And so we get on the plane, and I'm pissed at myself. I'm livid. I mean, I lost this one all by myself, no help. And so we get on the plane, and Revo's sitting there reading a book, and I'm just getting this mood. I'm going to do something here to liven up the crowd. And so I grabbed the book from Revo and threw it to Sparky Lyle. And Sparky grabbed it, and Revo jumped at Sparky. Sparky threw the book back to me and grabbed Revo. And as he was holding Revo, and now remember, we're on a commercial plane.
Right.
The plane's full of people. And I slowly pulled out the last page and ate it. The next page and ate it. I ate the last 4 pages out of his book and then threw it back to him. Yeah. And this kind of livened up the mood.
I'm sure.
Poor son bitch had to go to the store and read the last 4 pages.
He didn't. And we
He
did
just
see
didn't
him.
even finish it.
And we did see him in a store the next trip. I think we were in Boston. And he's back in the back of the bookstore, trying to read the last 4 pages. And we went up to the front and said, ma'am, there's a guy in the back stealing your book. And we left.
That's just
good times.
And y'all were on a commercial flight with just regular folks that are going to their destination.
I got a standing ovation.
That's ballsy though, because you messed up the game, and it's like, I'm gonna go fuck with this guy.
Yeah. I mean, he was a reporter. He was fair game.
Yeah,
he was a fair game.
Bob Hood's a friend of ours, and Bob passed away a couple of years ago. Bob was an outdoor writer for Fort Worth paper I think Bob the only job he ever had was working for the Fort Worth paper, wasn't it?
Yeah, he started out delivering papers and then worked his way up to outdoor writer.
And good friend of both of ours. You and Bob spent a lot of time hunting at different places. Can you tell the story about y'all going to Montana?
Well, we went to Montana. I know what you're talking about. I can't. Give me a hint. The particular line.
The Chemo Man.
Oh, yeah. Well, we go to Montana, and we're going to go back into the Bitterroot Mountains fishing. And we go to a bar before, and Bob gets a little bit liquored up and starts going over and talking to this guy and ends up, this woman, and ends up spending a night with her, and come to find out her husband was on chemotherapy.
Oh, shit.
He was in bed. He couldn't even get out of bed. He was about to die.
Oh, no.
And Bob never lived that one down.
I talked to Bob about that story every time he was up here, except when he got cancer the last year. I thought, I'm not going to bring it.
That's poor taste.
And Dad told me, when he left, he said, you should have said something to him. He said, Bob would have thought it was funny, Jeff. He said he did for the whole time. He didn't care.
Yeah.
Bob was a good guy.
He was a really good guy. Really good man. I really miss Bob.
Well, you remember the day that we were shooting the muzzle loaders when we had all the fog goose hunting? I've loved to shoot muzzle loaders, and I've got two 10-gauge percussion muzzle loaders. One made in the 1870s, Scott, and another one was a modern one. And so I took Bob out. We're going to hunt geese with the muzzle loaders. Well, we're with Jeff, and we lay out in the field, got everything going, and it's one of these days where there's an inversion. There's a fog, and nothing is lifting. And these guys are calling away, and you can hear the geese coming in to the calls. You can't see them till they're about 50, 75 yards out. And all of a sudden they show up, boom, boom, boom. Well, we're shooting these muzzle loaders with black powder, and the blue smoke is just billowing. You know, with 10 gauges, we're shooting 150 grains of black powder.
Yeah.
Double barrels, so there's 4 barrels going off. After about 3 volleys, the blue smoke is hanging. Now you can only see about 25 yards. And these guys are starting to get in my shit big time about these muzzle loaders. And so by the end of the day, we've got so much blue smoke in the air, you can't see your feet.
Oh, shit.
The geese are landing 20 yards from us, walking around, and we can't
See them.
Oh, my. Jeff has been in my case forever about that.
Some good old times. Well, let's get off here so we can get Fergie
Hold
on
on.
here.
What
Okay.
what made you want to write this book?
Oh, yeah.
Sports, I won't say the name of the company, came to me about writing a book of funny Ranger tales.
Right.
This isn't your average baseball book. This is the funny things on and off the field happen, many which we were already talked about. And so I wrote the book, interviewed a bunch of ball players, got their stories, and then a month before I finished it, they went chapter many and went belly up. So this was 17 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So it sat in my files forever, and 3.5 years ago we moved south of Fort Worth. And as I'm going through my packaging, I come across the book. And then last summer I said, well, you know, we need to play with this. So we resurrected it and added a few stories and got the book going. But it's these crazy tales. I mean, I was a 3-time American League All-Star and 1979 American League Relief Pitcher of the Year. A lot of good times remembered on the mound game-wise. But this is the stuff that I remember and absolutely love, is the craziness on and off the field.
Yeah.
And it's this is what friends are made of. I mean, we'll talk to Fergie later, and he was one of my partners in crime. You know, we caused more trouble and just had a great time, though. Absolutely great time.
And that's the same as like hunting. You know, the hunts are great, but the memories that I carry from year to year are the stuff that happened in the office. It's the stuff that happens around the dinner table. The hunts are great.
Deer camp isn't about the deer you killed. It's about the bullshit that goes on.
Yeah.
The male bonding, shall we call it.
Yeah.
My wife would roll her eyes like, yeah, that's what you want to call it. But it's just, when men get together, it's a chuckle. And one thing you got to remember is we do some really silly, stupid stuff in life. And the people that won't admit it and deny it ever happened are the ones that have trouble. The rest of us laugh and go, boy, we were really dumb that day. Wasn't that great?
You got to live and let live.
Yeah.
You're a very underrated ball player. Very, very good.
You've been talking to my wife again.
You are a very underrated baseball player. One of the best to ever play. And you get little credit for it. if you played today, you would make $15 to $20 million a year.
Yeah, but I'd be an asshole, and then you couldn't get along with me. So it's better I made nothing. And I'm a nice, fine, standing-up guy, so.
You had the greatest relief year ever in the history of the Texas Rangers.
That I did. It was, everything fell together that year. I started the season as Sparky Lyle's setup man. And I come in the 7th, 8th inning, and I pitched well enough that Sparky never got a chance to get in the game. Yeah, I still hold, I think, 5 or 6 Ranger records out of the bullpen. Most wins in a season with 13. The lowest ERA in a season of anybody with 100 innings or more with a 1.57. Most strikeouts in a season out of the bullpen with 139. Most inning pitched with 143. And the lowest, what they call an ERA plus, of any Texas Ranger pitcher that pitched 200 innings or more in their career with a 2.64. But it is what it is, I mean, I've never dwelt on baseball. My wife used to accuse me of playing baseball simply to finance my hunting and fishing.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
And that's what we've done for the last 35 years, is I've managed lodges in Alaska, Brazil's Amazon, Argentina, Uruguay. I love being out in the field. Mm-hmm. If I'm killing stuff with a gun, a bow, and these days it's more with a camera than anything else. Well, if you shoot them with a camera, you don't have to clean them.
And you get to shoot them again, possibly.
Yes.
That's right. What'd you do with your Rolaids trophy? You got it at your house and displayed?
Yeah, I think it's sitting in the garage.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
You need to take that to a museum, Jim.
No, I'll probably give it to one of my sons.
That'd be a great gift. They should put that up. That's a hell of an honor.
Well, I've got another trophy that's a big honor to me, and it's kind of inconsequential, but I spent 7 years in the minor leagues. I've got a Sterling Silver Cup that was a AAA Topps All-Star team. In AAA in 74, I won 17 games and struck out 220 in 189 innings. And somebody winning 17 games in the minor leagues, it sounds inconsequential, but when you spend 7 years there, that's big.
Yeah. Before we get off here, you played in high school. There was 3 kids in your class that you graduated that played in the pros, right?
Yeah.
Majors.
Terry Collins that managed the Mets. Brian Sullivan got as high as A-ball. And then our American Legion team, we had another guy named Dick Lang who pitched for the Angels. So on that American Legion team, we had 4 that signed professional contracts. 2 played in the major leagues. 1 managed in the major leagues.
Did y'all get beat ever?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I played junior varsity baseball when I was a junior in high school.
See?
And then went on to do what you did.
And spent 19 years in professional baseball. Yeah, don't ever give up.
That's right.
That's what's amazing to me is you played 19 years. That's a long career. The careers haven't gotten any longer today.
Unless you're Tom Brady.
Even he's only 22 years.
Well, but you're right, but I'm just saying.
But what I'm saying is the way, back to your drinking, the story of the guy warming up, his idea of conditioning was a vodka tonic and a cigarette before a game. And
this wasn't before a game. This was in between games.
But you guys all had long careers.
Oh,
and you didn't take care of your body the way that the guys are today.
Well, I'll tell you what. Wait till you talk to Fergie here next. He's 79 right now, and he retired 2 years ago.
Ralph Neely, you knew Ralph, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Ralph told me one time, he said people would have shit if they'd seen us at halftime of the Super Bowl. In the Super Bowls they played in, he said, we're sitting there drinking Cokes and smoking cigarettes, every one of us sitting in the locker room in the Dallas Cowboys. And he goes, could you imagine today if you went in there drinking Cokes and smoking cigarettes? It's a different world, different breed. Guys were different then. Men were men then, a lot of pro athletes are alpha males. There's no doubt about that. But an alpha male in just your regular communities are not the alpha males they used to be.
Well, I don't have a bun on my head. I know that.
But I just think that's fascinating because
exactly
there's
right.
this notion now that you have to take care of your body. You've got to do this and you got to stretch and you got to do yoga. And you guys in the 70s and 80s just, fuck it, let's just go step on the mountain, let's do it.
We did, but I'll tell you what, the way I feel when I get up in the mornings now, you think, maybe I should have taken better care of this body. I mean, what is going to work today?
Yeah.
Oh, that hurts.
What would you do different?
I probably would have drank scotch instead of Crown Royal.
But that's what I'm saying. You wouldn't have changed much, though.
No.
I don't like scotch either. Lewis Henderson told me you don't have hangovers if you have scotch.
Yeah. You know, Lewis.
You know, you introduced me to Lewis the very first year we had the lodge here, which would have been long time ago. One of my best friends in the world, good guy. And he's going to listen to this. So, Lewis, I appreciate you introducing me to Lewis, and you had a lot of good times. And we've got an old painting that Larry Kemp, another friend of ours, we got a lot of friends of ours that are dead, Jim, that we've known together.
You know, people ask me about it. I tell everybody that remembers me is dead.
That's right. But we've got an old painting we found, Lewis, that's up here that I'm going to get back to Lewis to give him put in his house, because I bet he forgot he brought that up here to me when his place burned up. But anyways, I appreciate you being on here. You've been a friend for a long time, and look forward to another 25, 27 years.
Oh, boy, you're wishing.
And you can get your book on Amazon?
I get to get the book on Amazon or Kindle. 70s and 80s Tales from the Texas Rangers. You might get a chuckle, or you can email me. Go to emuoutfitting.com. My email's there, Jim Kern, and I'll be more than happy to send you an autograph copy for simply the cost of the book and shipping.
Beautiful.
If you're a sports fan or you're a Texas Ranger fan, even at that, just growing up in the 70s and 80s, you need to get the book. It's a must read. It's very good, and it's an easy read, and I highly recommend it.
I call it my commode book because it's in short stories. You can sit on the commode and read one or two at a time. It depends on how proficient you are in the commode.
I appreciate everybody for listening to us. God bless y'all, and have a great week.
Go check out all of our wonderful sponsors, and check out Jim's book on Amazon right now. You can get it. Check out Steak Plains Meat, Gundog Outdoors, Stanfield Hunting Outfitters, Looking Glass Duck Club Podcast, Lucky Duck, Dirty Duck Coffee, Shin Gear Waders, Pacific Calls, Boss Shot Shells, Dive Bomb Industries, and Alpha Outdoors.